Well, today in a case brought by the state of Florida on behalf of Rolling's victims, Rolling's co-author was on the hot seat. Sondra London defended her right to keep any money she made from the sale of the serial killer story. She says that's her right as a journalist.
What we're interested in here is the making of a serial killer, not in what law enforcement chose to do about it, or in what the victims may have done, or the victims' families may have done, or in what the state might have done in making this case against Mr. Rolling. That's outside the scope of this book. This book title is The Making of a Serial Killer, and that's the subject. And all of the research that I've done into the Rolling case, only that part which conforms to this descriptive title is in this book. Okay?
Actually, the title is The Making of a Serial Killer by the Serial Killer. Isn't that true?
No, it's The Making of a Serial Killer, the real story of the Gainesville murders in the killer's own words. That's the title.
The focus on my personal relationship is merely to cover up for the fact that the state doesn't have a case against me on the constitutional issues regarding my freedom of speech and this prisoner's freedom to express his story.
Well, Richard Rosenbaum, would you agree, as the man who represents on appeal Mr. Rolling in these First Amendment matters, that this relationship is irrelevant, or would you say it is indeed relevant because this is part of Mr. Rolling's right to speak?
It's totally irrelevant. What we're talking about is, can we stop someone from talking about a specific category of speech? And we can't. If he wants to talk about anything and everything, he can. It's his First Amendment right.
I'd like everyone to know that the families of the Gainesville murder victims all accepted thousands of dollars for the rights to the story of the murders in Gainesville and stood up in court in front of dozens of reporters and threatened to kill me if I were to publish a real story of what happened in Gainesville.
If they don't want to buy the book, if they don't want to pay money, then don't buy it. Don't go in that bookstore. Don't go in that adult theater. But we should have a right to have that. We should have the right to have the theaters, and Danny should be able to write his book along with...
Well, I don't think any of those people have read any of my books, and I would urge
actually,
anyone
I've read your book, and in fact, I couldn't hardly get through it. It was so...
It's not for everyone, that's for sure. I invite anyone to come to my website at sondralondon.com and browse some of the material that is there.
How could you be in love with a guy like this? How could you be in love with Danny Rolling?
Excuse me, Greg, but that's one of the, you know, how could anybody be in love with anybody? You know, these, you can't assume because
Leslie,
someone's in prison that he's not a human being, no matter what he's done.
Why should I have to defend
People love all kinds of people.
What difference does it make under the law?
But I don't recall anyone asking Norman Mailer about his relationship with a well-known killer here in New York after In the Belly and the Beast made much money for him.
And I don't remember anybody asking Marsha Clark to give back the money that she made on the O.J. Simpson case, because that, too, was blood money made behind the murder of two innocent people. So, you know, what's good for the geese should be good for the ganders, and apparently it is.
The co-author of that book was Sondra London, who was at one time engaged to Rolling. The state sued London under a law that prohibits criminals or people acting on their behalf from profiting from a crime.
I don't think that the point of view of the offender is ever going to be fairly represented unless the person that is facilitating that communication is willing to allow them to take the lead and say, this is your message, and I want to present it from your point of view.
About 10 weeks ago, a judge ruled in favor of the state, ordering London to fork over her profits, which the state estimates at $20,000. And she defends her work, which includes a website about serial killers, as legitimate journalism.
I want to know what they did, I want to know why they did it, I want to know the surrounding circumstances and the contributing factors.
And we are joined tonight by that woman, Sondra London. She is the author of The Making of a Serial Killer, the book about Danny Rolling, and she joins us now live from Jacksonville, Florida. Miss London, the state of Florida says you haven't turned over a dime. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you plan to turn over the money?
Well, I'm under the advice of an attorney, and my attorney is not present tonight, so there are a lot of things I really can't comment on.
Well, we are going to get to your attorney in just a moment, but let me ask you one other question. The judge says that the Son of Sam laws, as they're known nationally, should apply to you. Do you disagree with that, or do you perhaps dispute the court on some other ground?
Well, certainly the Son of Sam law that is stated here in Florida does not apply to me. In addition, the Son of Sam laws are unconstitutional in any case.
As a violation of the First Amendment?
Absolutely. The work that went into this book it was basically a collaboration all the way between Danny Rolling and myself. The words that you see there are Danny Rolling's words, but when I met Danny Rolling, he was not able to write anything at all. He wasn't able to express what had gone on in his mind. It required quite a lot of effort on my behalf to teach Danny how to express himself and to teach him to be willing to look into the darkness of his mind and pull out the things that he was able to write. Once again, none of this is illegal.
Well, let's go to
the fact
George
that the state
Waz.
is focusing on this kind of material merely is a distraction from the fact that they have no evidence that any money has ever passed to this felon or that I have accepted any money on his behalf.
Sondra London, do you plan to fight this thing on principle?
Oh, absolutely. This will be fought all the way to the Supreme Court because this kind of law is unconscionable and it needs to be rectified.
All right. Thank you, Sondra London, George Wash, for joining us tonight.